Hello and welcome to another StarCraft 2 co-op video. Today we'll be looking at part 2 of Kerrigan's build orders. This guide, as well as the previous two, were all requested by Primal Hive member Kinwell Pronger. Thank you for your support, and Kerrigan mains, give him a shout out in the comments. Part 1 was this guide on Kerrigan's build order for maps with rocks. If you haven't seen it yet, please check it out first, then come back. First, we'll take a look at build orders on maps with contested expos. There are two types of contested expos, heavily defended and lightly defended. I will show you three build orders. One is Frost's build order on Mal Warfare. The other two are by the same person, both on Chain of Ascension. One of these rushes Omegas and the other rushes ability efficiency. Let's look at them first and then analyze the differences.
身为升格第一人的我，必将铲除这些。进化完成了。一组敌人正试图支援 A 盟的勇士。
发现敌方大级部队。
Let's look at the builds side by side. Frost's build is ahead in supply thanks to the Queen and injections. The Omega build has 2 Omegas before Kerrigan is out, and the Hive Rush build has started ability efficiency. Note that the total value of ZPJ's builds are almost the same. Frost's build mines more minerals but less gas. ZPJ's builds are essentially the same, but the Omega build is less complicated since you don't have to count the drones mining gas. It's better because you can get Omegas if you need to, or rush Hive if you don't. It's better for heavily defended Expos since it'll take you some time to clear the Expos, and thus you're better off getting a head start on upgrades. Frost's build is better on lightly defended Expos. Since you have more drones and larvae, you can saturate your new base a lot faster. If you can't expo that fast, you might as well take advantage of the extra 150 to 200 gas from ZPJ's build. I think ZPJ's opening is better since you'll probably need Omega Worms to transfer workers anyway. However, Frost's build is similar to the build order that you use for maps with rocks, so if you don't really want to memorize a completely different build for other maps, use this one. Honestly though, I don't think the differences in these builds will make or break your run. Next, we have Dead of Night. First, we'll take a look at two build orders. On the left, we have the build order I used to use. On the right, we have the build order used by Panzer Kanonen, a high-level Korean player. Note that in his build, he goes all in on the gas early on. However, this vastly delays his tech because he barely has any workers mining minerals. At 4 minutes when Kerrigan is out, my old build order has better tech but fewer workers on minerals. Panzer's build also has a ton of gas ready to be used for his army. At 7 minutes, Panzer's build ends up with more supply than my build, and he has 600 more gas. However, his tech is really slow because he still doesn't have ability efficiency. 7:30 is the start of day 2, so he won't be able to use the reduced cooldowns when clearing. Now, it's time to show you my new build.
Listen up, commanders. We've got a serious level of infestation. These monsters are dangerous at night, but they burn out. Almost here. It's nighttime, Commander. We are unending. Yeah. Call these ones the boomers. They spit after.
Evolution. Aura is now ready. Evolution complete. Evolution complete.
The night's almost over. We'll be safe. The fight.
At 7 minutes, my new build is at a higher supply count and has better tech than Panzer's build. Nobody has any Omegas yet, most likely because there's no need for them until day 2. Panzer's build floats tons of gas, which could be cashed in for about 20 mutas later. However, since his hive is slow, his clearing will be slightly slower during day 2. My new build is more balanced. It also uses the extractor trick and early queen like the one used for maps with rocks, so there aren't too many differences. Since most of the upgrades are done by day 2, all subsequent resources will be spent on Omegas and Army. With more units, you can clear more buildings during day 2. Use Panzer's build if you don't need Kerrigan's upgrades so quickly, since you can eventually use that gas for a huge army. Use my new build if you don't really want to remember an entirely new build just for Dead of Night. Just like with the previous build orders, neither one is significantly better than the other. And lastly, we have some build orders for Void Rifts. Look at her. She cries when she sees rifts. As you probably know, Kerrigan the commander is not good against rifts. Her slow build order also makes it tough for her to take out both rifts unless you're lucky. I'll show you two build orders that I learned from good Kerrigan players. Regardless of which build you use, move your first 2 overlords to spots where they can get vision for Omega Worms later. Queens help defend, but don't let her die. Lings should not be used to fight the trickles. On maps with rocks, they should go break the rocks. If possible, keep them alive so they can camp a rift that spawns at 350. After 4 minutes, you should get an Omega, then the Hive, then expand. Your goal is to get control of the rifts first. Build 1 gets an earlier lair, but build 2 has better eco. The Queen makes that possible. Since those 10 seconds won't make a huge difference, use build 2 for your Void Rift adventures. And now for miscellaneous questions. The first one is, how do I balance between masteries that buff Kerrigan and masteries that allow for cheaper costs on units and tech? So basically, how do you allocate your mastery points? Since P2 heavily relies on the hero unit and has a weaker immobilization wave, I almost always use 30 damage, 30 unit cost, and 30 attack speed. I sometimes put points in immobilization wave to kill marines and medics, but that's usually not necessary. If you're using P2, just keep them at 30. It's pretty much always like this, and most P2 players do this as well. This question is more for non-P2. I almost always put 30 in energy regen as it does more damage than regular attacking, thus generating more carapace. 27-3 is good against Zerg. For the second set, it depends on your game plan. Use max immo wave when you want to clear areas of the map and you don't need much help with the attack waves. This is useful against mutators like Transmutation and Avenger, where fighting them head-on might cause more problems. In other cases, max unit gas costs, especially when you need a bigger army to help clear areas or defend the objective, is better. Here are some breakpoints for immobilization wave. Copy them down if you want. For the third set, you generally want faster and cheaper upgrades except in specific scenarios. Put 1 point in damage to guarantee a 2-shot kill on destroyers. This should be used on maps where you know you'll be fighting a lot of hybrid destroyers. Taking 1 point away from quicker and cheaper upgrades isn't going to be a big difference. Put 17 points in Kinetic Blast to 2-tap Void Launch shuttles. You usually don't want to put points in ability damage just for Crushing Grip, but here are 2 breakpoints in case you want to test them out. You can also put all 30 points in ability damage when you only plan on using one kind of unit, so you don't need to research that many upgrades. If you use Lings as your mineral dump, you should probably get their upgrades too. In that case, you should still use faster upgrades. Next, just how greedy can you afford to be with Kerrigan carrying while you skimp on combat units to saturate your economy? In general, don't make any combat units until you're done with macro. Her units are weak and Kerrigan is strong enough in the early game. What is a general timetable to be saturated in a timely manner? About 6 minutes. Maybe like 8 minutes for maps with contested expos. Can hatchery at the rocks be good in some solo mutations, or is that 300 minerals better spent on other things? And if it's the latter, what should I get? With Prober OL's build order, you won't need a hatch next to the rocks. As mentioned in the previous video, TeamLiquid.net's hatch at rocks build is equal to Prober OL's build on maps like OE and Lock and Load, but is worse when you need to deal with an early wave. So you might as well learn the better build. Where on certain maps without environmental mutators active can you sneak your first or second overlord for vision for well-placed Omega Worms? This is only really useful when there are rifts, otherwise you don't need to do these. There are 3 maps where you'll want to do this even when there are no rifts. Those 3 will be in green. On Chain of Ascension, even with rifts, you don't really need it. Maybe to get vision of the area outside of the second hybrid or near the first bonus. On Cradle, if there's a construct on the left side on the low ground, it'll be difficult to get rifts behind it, and Overlord spotting the ground there will be helpful. Not really needed on Dead of Night, maybe just to get to the southwest corner faster. On Lock and Load, you can get to the back of the western and southeastern locks with Omega Worms. Not really needed on Mal Warfare. There is a spot in front of the second bonus that can be used to access the farther parts of the map more easily. On Minor Evat, you can send one to the ship left of the natural as well as trigger the Eradicators early. You can also drop worms there after 820. On MO, you can get to the third area faster. On OE, you can reach rifts near the bonus track faster. Not really needed on Part and Parcel. On rifts to Core Hall, you can sneak up from behind by dropping an Omega between the second set and the path to the second bonus. For Scythe of Amon, you should always send your Overlord around the bottom to the Expo. That way you can expand within a minute of Kerrigan spawning. On tempo, you can get to the area outside of the bottom right bonus more quickly. Keep your overlords at home on VP. For Void Launch, having vision of the high ground is good, otherwise you'll have to walk up the ramp. And for Void Thrashing, you can go around the back to spawn camp the right spawn point. You can also bypass the encampment between the first and third sets by doing this. Is it a good idea to fast tech for ability efficiency and the other ability buffs for Kerrigan before you get anything else like Omega Worms or tech structures for units? I kinda answered this question, but assuming there's a contested expo, if you don't need Omega Worms early because there are no multitask mutators, then get all of Kerrigan's upgrades first. If you need Omegas, then get a few, then get Kerrigan upgrades before getting units. Her units aren't really good in low numbers and not very good without their upgrades, so you don't want to really make that many until their upgrades are done. How can I judge when to make units or Omega Worms? Since the latter sets you back from making an army, when should I start to make them and how many? According to ProberOL, you only need about 4 Omega Worms. I make about 6 to 10, sometimes more than that, which is probably too many. They're good for stalling, and with that many, I'm guaranteed to have one available when I need it. Make 1 before you make any army units, and add more if you need more. It's hard to say exactly when and how many, because it depends on too many factors. The best time to add worms would be when there's some downtime before the next wave. However, if you rely on immobilization wave to clear the waves, and the army to clear bases, then your downtime would be when you're about to use your ult. Against killbots, are you just not able to take advantage of Vespene gas cost reduction or expeditious evolution since you're too busy feeding the killbots and making lots of Omega Worms? When fighting killbots, you're not only feeding and doing hero solo. If that is your plan, then you don't need cost reduction. For reference, in Double Trouble, I had 50 mutas at some point while feeding killbots throughout the entire game. I definitely needed expeditious evolutions for that. Kerrigan's late game killbot feeding plan is using Brute Lords to attack your own Omegas to produce Brootlings. It is not the only method, of course. You can also use like Creep Tumors. If you use this plan, you don't need cheaper upgrades. The short answer is you can still make an army. If possible, you should make Creep Tumors and just use those to feed because they are actually free. Against Missile Command, how should I position my structures and defensive units? Start off with 2 spores, 1 near each extractor. If you're making Hydras, patrol a group around each edge. It's hard to say exactly how many, but pretty much you'll just use like all of them. All of your Hydras will just be patrolling. If you mass queens, you'll need to transfuse each other periodically. I don't really like this because they often die to splitter missiles. If you mass spores, just clump them or put them in a line. If you mass Omegas, just make free trash buildings everywhere and accept the fact that once PDDs come, spores won't really do anything, so you're bound to lose a few. Just don't get nuked. You'll lose a few of your regular Omegas, and that's just too bad, it just happens. Against economic mutators like Missile Command, how is it possible to get defenses and Omega Worms without making too many compromises to your ability to move out on the map? If the mutators allow it, use Kerrigan for everything and spend the rest of your econ on defense. Kerrigan hero solos the early game anyway, so Missile Command doesn't change that. You can mass queens for healing, and they can heal buildings once in a while. Consider using max immobilization wave or P2 for better clearing. In the mid game, add a few Hydras and Ultras to help fight the bigger waves that Kerrigan can't kill on her own. 5 to 6 Ultras and a handful of Hydras should be enough. And that's it for this lesson. Like and subscribe to show your support for my work. Share this with your friends who are always asking about Kerrigan build orders. Thanks to all the members who are supporting me. If you would like to join, check out the link in the description. And while you're here, why don't you check out my previous guide on how to stop the first wave as Kerrigan? See you there.